first thing that hit you was smog and the smell. And there were people there, but there were skeletons and they were shuffling along aimlessly. And as they were shuffling along, they just collapse and die. There were dead bodies all over the place, piles of corpses. It was a horrific scene.
Behind me is rubble. The Nazis razed this site to the ground in 1943. They were trying to hide evidence of what really lay here. Gas chambers, workers' houses. This is a site where 500,000 Jews met their deaths. After they were gassed in gas chambers, they were taken to the trees behind me, where their bodies were burned. In the local village, people heard rumours of the extermination as guards went in for a drink and boasted about what they'd done.
My name is Marla Tribbitt. I was born in Poland, and I was only 8 years old, well, approaching 9, when war broke out in 1939. And life changed completely. Ours was the first town to have a ghetto, and we were very overcrowded. People were dying because of the overcrowding and the epidemics that caused. And subsequently, I was working in a labor camp. I started at the age of 12, and that was followed by concentration camps when we were deported, first to Ravensbrück and then to Bergen-Belsen. Bergen-Belsen was the most shocking place on earth. And when they took us through to the main camp, which, as I mentioned, was very overcrowded, people were arriving from the camps in Poland into the camps in Germany. I had my little cousin with me, whose mother was taken away in the ghetto. She was deported, and I was the only relatives who looked after her. So at the age of 12, I had the responsibility of looking after my little cousin, and that was a terrible responsibility to carry at a time like that. And well, ultimately, the war came to an end, but not before I contracted typhus, which loads of other people were dying of typhus and other diseases. And then, miraculously, luckily, we were liberated by the British Army, and they were absolutely wonderful. I mean, it'll take me a long time to describe how wonderful they were. The only other member of my family to survive was my brother.
So my name is Salomon Jacques Weiser. I was born in 1942 in Antwerp, and this was obviously a period of the war, and my father had already been taken away to work on the Atlantic Wall for the Todt organization. My mother looked after me on her return from Lyon in France, and one day she decided she needed to go shopping and was picked up in the streets of Antwerp, taken to Malines, which was a Belgian army barrack, from where she was taken and murdered immediately on arrival in September of 1942 at Auschwitz-Birkenau. The horror is the memory and the lack of knowing in many respects, because 6, 7, 8, 9 months old, you have no memories. And so, yeah, difficult. But it's amazing that so many survived in reality. There's the highlighting of numbers. Numbers are, in a way, meaningless as statistics. It's the humanistic element. And the fact that, in many respects, I owe my life to the goodness of people who hid me, who helped those who were in the underground, and the lady who had, towards the end, hid me for the final part of that particular year in 44, 45. Was not Jewish. She put her life on the line, as they all did. Anybody who hid children, adults or whatever, were liable to be taken away and shot or sent here to concentration camps in one way, so either Poland or Germany.
I'm at Belzec extermination camp in Poland. 500,000 Jews lost their lives here, just 2 survived. The Nazis were in such a hurry to continue the killing machine that the average life expectancy here was just 90 minutes. Jewish people would leave the train about 300 yards from where I'm standing and take a walk down this tunnel in the belief that they were being resettled. In reality, they were walking to their deaths.
I thought I'd seen the worst of the worst when I visited Treblinka and subsequently Auschwitz-Birkenau. Belzec was totally and utterly mind-blowing insofar as the thought of people arriving and within 90 minutes, an hour and a half, murdered and slaughtered in the most bestial way. And one hopes that by telling a story that has been devastating to a lot of people, that maybe, just maybe, in the future, hate will be reduced and maybe the light at the end of the tunnel we all talk about and the love of one man for his humanity will prevail. But that's my hope. I'm not sure that it will succeed, I have to admit.
My name is Barbara Frankis. I was born in Warsaw, Poland. In 1939, German army invaded Poland. I was smuggled out with my mother out of the ghetto in 1942 or beginning of 43. I was too little to remember. My mother was hidden in a basement of the building with other Jews. I was in the same building in someone's flat. A guy who had a wife and a daughter of the same age as me, who my mother paid monthly a sum of money to keep me hidden. I was not allowed to walk. I had to stand behind the wardrobe entire day, only allowed to sit down and have my meal. The wardrobe was at the right angles to the window and was pushed away, not quite in the corner, leave enough room for me to stand behind it. And the reason I was apparently standing behind the wardrobe all day was I wouldn't make any noise because the neighbors would have discovered that there were 2 children rather than 1 and would have immediately suspected it was a Jewish child was actually being hidden there and kept there for money. Unfortunately, I was spending my days literally standing all day. My only entertainment, in inverted commas, was licking my finger and drawing various shapes. And only at night I was obviously allowed to sleep on a straw mattress without any bedding and without any night clothes. As far as I know, I never washed or anything. One day we heard shots. No, we didn't hear shots. We heard a lot of commotion. I discovered that someone has betrayed the 18 people who were in the basement of the building, 18 Jews which were hidden, and told the German Nazis that there are Jews there. So they got them out, and the punishment was shooting them straight away. Among them was my mother, but the habit was everyone in the building had to come and watch the execution. Fortunately, because I was a little girl and I stood behind the grown-ups, which were taller than me, so I heard the shots, but I didn't see anything. Had I seen it, I would have screamed, and they would have known I was connected to one of the people who were hidden, and as well as me, and my host family would have been shot as well. After my mother was murdered, I didn't have anywhere to go. I was homeless, and As I was left in the forest, I was found for some children sledging. They took me to a police station, and there one of the policemen adopted me.
I'm here at Auschwitz concentration camp, where 1.1 million people lost their lives in the World War II. I'm here with delegates from the March of the Living, people who have come to pay tribute, to mourn, to remember those who died.
It is very emotional for me, no matter how many times I come. But the fact that I'm with friends, it's sort of supportive and makes it a little bit easier, but one never comes to terms with it.
I feel very upset, cut up, I'm afraid, and although I have not been in a concentration camp, I spent my childhood in Warsaw Ghetto, I feel all my family perished, was murdered in concentration camps, particularly I think Treblinka. Very emotional, and it's a very much present situation. Remind me what happened, and I'm really frightened for the future of the world children. People only see one side rather than have a balanced view. And destruction of Israel, called by so many people in different countries, particularly in the Middle East, it worries me. And I hope in my life I will not go through the fear of genocide again.
I'm humbled and I'm deeply moved, and I have to remember that I was a child and I wouldn't have survived without my wonderful sister and my parents, for whom I shall be eternally grateful. When I heard about the attack, it made me immediately remember how my grandmother was pushed into a wooden synagogue with her daughter, who was pregnant, and they were burnt alive because the horror just woke up, reawoken the horror, and I no longer felt safe.
I don't want to be here. I hate this place. I've been here many times because it's important to come with the March of the Living and educate people, but when I come here, today more than on some other times, I'm thinking of my beloved maternal grandfather, to whom I was very close. When the Nazis evicted my family from our home after Kristallnacht, he took us in. We were just very close, and he was a beautiful, wonderful, loving man. And I've done enough research to know that he stepped off the cattle wagon when he arrived at Auschwitz, and he didn't live to see another day. And so I don't forget that. I know that there were so many who perished, but I feel it very personally today, and so very sad.
It's terrifying because I understand how naive people with a simplistic concept of the world voted Nazi. They weren't actually instigators of the mass killing, but without them the Nazis couldn't have done it. And currently we have people in Britain who think they are supporting the poor Palestinians. I'm not in favor of Palestinian Gazans being harmed, but you need to consider both sides. And people with a false sense of justice, because they only consider one side, they systematically ignore the outrageous horror committed by people with a plan to exterminate the Jews of Israel. It's a terrifying reminder of where the collapse of balanced thought leads.
I'm totally overwhelmed. My mind goes to the days when there were happier times, and sadly my mother, together with other members of her family, perished here on arrival in 1942. My father survived, luckily. I have a duty to commemorate and to remember, and that's why I'm here with the March of the Living, and supported by friends my own family, and a tremendous group of people. It is awesome to be here. It's a sunny day, the birds are singing, and we can only remember the good things and not hate. We need to love each other to the maximum. We have a duty to ensure that the memory of all those who perished here goes forward through education.